Welcome everybody, thank you for coming. For those that attended NAB, the weather was spectacular this year. It worked out quite well, even though we were stuck inside for the majority of it. Of course, when we came back, we wanted to get back on the plane and go back to Vegas with the weather. So tonight we have 4 panelists. We were supposed to have 5. I apologize. Unfortunately, our student panelist, which was going to be a new thing this year, discovered he had an exam. So some things take precedence. So I'm going to welcome the 4 speakers up. Each of them is going to do kind of a brief, 5 to 10 minute presentation. And then what we'll do is throw it out to the audience for questions about their presentations. So without further ado, our first speaker is Paul Briscoe, who is a consultant, a member of our SMPTE board. Come on down, Paul. Rob Peretti is at Solotech, and I apologize, I don't have your bio in front of me, so you are?
Sales Director.
Sales Director. Paul Steckley, a man of many of these meetings at Applied Electronics. And finally, Brian Young from BizTech. All right.
Crowd goes wild.
So what we'll do is, just by order of seating, Paul Briscoe, you win as the presenter. So just give me a minute to get your slides in.
Sure. Welcome to fabulous Las Vegas, the MET effect, worst marketing slogan in the world. They're using it again this year. Media, entertainment, and technology. Great concept. Just doesn't really roll off the tongue. Opening day crowds look pretty good. I don't think there's anybody. Do any of us have any attendance numbers? Paul and I were talking before. We don't really think we know them.
95 or 96.
95 or 96. So a little lighter than. Yeah. Okay. So not bad though. A little lighter by the 3rd day for sure. What was cool? This was cool. I spotted just a few cool things I'm going to touch on here, and I'm going to rant on one subject. But this was seriously cool. Blackmagic Design for $1,500–1,600 US has a 5-quarter image sensor, 4K, P60 camera, and it's like seriously cool. So this was one of the cool things I saw. The reason I have this up front is the number of cool things I saw were few. This year was not a watershed for cool technology, in my opinion. On the other end of the scale is this sort of cool thing, which is also kind of neat. Extremely tiny, extremely peculiar, interesting little thing. And there were lots of little sort of things like this at the show, but nothing major and big. A topic though I want to talk about, because this is big and this has been coming for years now, is ATSC 3.0. There was a huge push this year to try and popularize the concept of it. There was a little autonomous vehicle there in the ATSC booth. This was out in front of the Central Hall. And they had some off-air demos of ATSC 3.0 playing 4K, UHD. Interesting thing about ATSC, oh, well, let me roll this, can you roll this, Mr. PowerPoint operator? I think if you slide on it, you can hit a play button. I just want to, this is a little story about ATSC 3.0.
Yeah, there's no audio to see.
Television broadcasters are leading the way with a new system that will merge the capabilities of over-the-air broadcasting with the internet. 2 decades ago, the Advanced Television Systems Committee celebrated the FCC's adoption of the first all-digital over-the-air TV standard. They offered pristine, high-definition video delivered in the same 6 MHz channel once needed for black and white, and then color TV. Now broadcasters are evolving to meet the needs of today's viewers and advertisers. This next-generation broadcast platform merges the best capabilities of over-the-air and broadband viewing. The result is a convergence of the most popular method of watching live events with the variety of programming available online. ATSC 3.0 is designed from the ground up to be all of those things. A next-generation transmission system that can deliver 4K Ultra HD images with high dynamic range, plus interactive features and multi-channel immersive audio. ATSC 3.0 is the world's first broadcast standard built on an Internet Protocol backbone. This offers the advantage of both broadcast and broadband. Designed to integrate with Internet-delivered content, ATSC 3.0 will present viewers with more streams, more choices, more channels, and more flexibility. The system takes advantage of new technology with advanced video and audio compression and more robust modulation. Responding to the needs of broadcasters, this new broadcast platform is exceptionally robust, adaptable for single-frequency network transmission systems that can overcome physical challenges to deliver TV deep inside buildings and on the go. The result is better indoor reception and wide coverage for mobile devices. ATSC 3.0's advanced emergency alerting is designed to wake up sleeping devices, alert families of impending emergencies, and provide a rich variety of video, text, audio, and graphic information when it's needed most. New audience measurement tools come with ATSC 3.0, and the new system can also be a pipeline for delivering data to the car, to mobile devices, and to the home. ATSC 3.0 is built for a variety of receiving devices too. New gateway receivers will deliver over-the-air TV to existing tablets and smart TVs through Wi-Fi. Mobile devices and TV sets equipped with ATSC 3.0 receivers will make TV available virtually anywhere. That's all great news for viewers who will find it easier than ever to tune in to live TV broadcasts anywhere, anytime. For advertisers, ATSC 3.0's advanced advertising features include interactive and ad targeting capabilities in real time to the viewer. Best of all, ATSC 3.0 is designed from the ground up with a suite of standards that can be updated in the future. ATSC 3.0. A new broadcast platform that is flexible, adaptable, and focused on the future today.
So that's pretty exciting. It's almost like the internet. And this is apparently the future of the over-the-air broadcast paradigm. And I mention this because this is kind of personal to me, because in all my years in broadcasting, starting at the CBC in 1980, I've been laser focused on broadcasting. And this year's NAB, I absolutely believe that model is in fact now behind us. And this ATSC stuff kind of proves it to me. Does anybody remember 10 years ago ATSC Mobile? That was going to be the next big thing. Every smartphone was going to have a little whip antenna, which we'd pull out, and then we could watch ATSC Mobile handheld. And it turned out, of course, to be just the most ridiculous vision of a bunch of old white men mapped onto millennials and young people. And that sort of is continuing today. I copied this text just because this is a little bit frightening. This is the first time an autonomous vehicle and next-gen TV have been combined to provide a powerful glimpse of the future. This is this autonomous vehicle that drove a little loop around the NAB. Riding in a driverless vehicle is a revealing moment for people to see where the future of mobility is taking us. And viewing live HD broadcasts while doing so really highlights one of the great opportunities that broadcasters have in deploying the ATSC 3.0 standard. So something kids have been doing for better than a decade, riding around with somebody else driving, is impressing this individual. Sinclair, who's a big broadcast group behind this, they call this mobile video the cornerstone of next-gen TV efforts. Mobile TV will help jumpstart this transition. And the demonstration will show how broadcasting to moving vehicles is practical and commercially viable proposition. Again, with the moving vehicle thing, I don't know what that's about. And finally, Mark Riker, the ATSC president, one of ATSC 3's key benefits is mobility, giving broadcasters who deploy the new service reach far beyond the living room screen. Holy wow, that sounds impressive. We fully expect 3.0 to be entertaining passengers in self-driving vehicles, again with this theme. And for this technology to be used for providing other data services to riders, whether in autonomous vehicles or on the go with future mobile devices. I guess today's mobile devices don't have data services available, but the disconnect between ATSC 3 and what's going on in the world is like stunningly huge. And I'm really kind of scared for it. Probably the most scary thing was this one here, where speaking at CES panel, Ripley says the standard meets 5 core tenets, and I think you probably meant tenants, but for the broadcast industry, it'll help broadcasters deliver content to mobile devices, fair game, work seamlessly on the internet, debatable. It enables targeted advertising, oh yeah, and how. It provides robust content security, and it greatly increases the amount of content that can be delivered over a 6 megahertz spectrum. Still stuck with our 6 megahertz channels and that whole mentality of the 6 megahertz channel. Interestingly, in a related story, they're going to use ATSC 3.0 to collect user data. That's what this is all about, collecting user data. So, the amazing possibilities for the landscape of a nation of people who are increasingly cutting their cable cords and looking for free over-the-air broadcasting content. Dear Lord help me. So this is the problem with ATSC 3. A bunch of old white guys and one woman. I hate to say it, this looks like sort of, you know, an old banker's view of these damn kids. And this actually wraps it up for me and my thoughts about the future of it. There's the vehicle, the autonomous vehicle, which should be able to drive itself home, leaving the NAB on the back of a truck. Meanwhile, people like these people are just simply saying, experience the future of entertainment. And these are the disruptors. Amazon Web Services, we saw them all there with a little booth, and they basically say, hey, we have web services, come and see us. Do what you want inside our service. So I'm hoping the broadcast world picks up on ATSC3. I did a quick look today. There's Phoenix has a test platform station for ATSC3. Phoenix is great because, of course, their audience demo is an elderly one. And LG is providing all the receivers. You cannot, as of today, buy an ATSC3 enabled receiver in North America. So it's still going to be a long ramp. Of course, it's incompatible with ATSC1. I digress. This was cool. There's a lot of these. These LED panels now are beyond, they're just out of control. I think Paul's going to mention some too that he saw. They're just brilliant. They're fine pitched enough that you can get, you know, just some moderate distance from a huge panel. You get pixel fusion, you go, holy wow, is that ever really high resolution? And super light output, just incredible because it's direct illumination, of course. So these were all over the show, a number of people showing these. It's not really broadcasting, it's more about putting imagery on walls, putting imagery on stadiums, and some of this stuff is terrifying and beautiful. AI was everywhere. It's still, I guess, a disruptive thing from NAB's point of view, so it's an experiential zone. They don't want to really call it a business yet, but AI is AI for metadata, AI for image hunting, for database scrubbing, and for just establishing deep, rich information about your content is now turning up everywhere. And of course, this AI is turning up as cloud services, which is great as well. You can buy degrees of cloud service, go into your database, and go plowing through images and look for all the pictures of Gorbachev making a funny face or whatever you might want to pull out of your news archives and so on. It's still seen as experimental, and thus it's a zone, an NAB. When it moves out of being a zone, it's a real thing. DeGiro have an interesting thing. Good old DeGiro, our local friends, have now combined their bonded cellular system with Intelsat-based satellites, so they now provide even broader coverage. This won an award at the IABM Awards as well. Very nice little technology bump. Interesting thing here about radio broadcasting. Radio broadcasting takes a deeper dive into podcasting. Radio broadcasting has finally figured out that podcasting is radio broadcasting. And they're discovering that there's a lot of content being developed for podcasts that just isn't, people aren't going the normal radio route, they're just going with podcasts on the web. And so radio is now looking into podcasts as a source of content for radio shows, which makes great sense. Radio is one kind of broadcasting I personally believe in. It's passive, you can do it in the car, you can do it if you're doing something else with headphones. Not at all like TV, and radio is a huge feature, I believe. And just interesting to see that the world of podcasting is suddenly meshing tightly with radio. This was an interesting product. I had to listen to these actually. These are binaural recording headsets from Sennheiser. And you put them on, and it actually does nice binaural recording. And listening to them on a different pair of cans after recording is actually kind of creepy. It's a very, very good little recording headset. So this is a neat little gizmo. And of course, IP. I think we're probably going to talk about IP. I was involved, and maybe Lee will come up and talk about this. I'm sick of talking about it, but we did a thing called the IP Showcase. This was a multi-vendor thing. Yeah, there it is. Multi-organization sponsored thing. AES, AIMS, AMY-EBU, IBM, NAB, SMPTE, and VSF. And 50, depending who you talk to, 53 to 56 vendors provided equipment. And we had a number of technology demonstrations where we showed what was what the capabilities of the new technology were, the status of adoption by the industry, as I say, 50+ vendors, and we built a 2110 studio where our little live presentations, which I think, oh, here we go, here's our studio, a couple of cameras in the back, the controller around the corner, and you can't tell from looking, but it's all using SD2110 dematerialized audio video metadata transport over IP. So that was my focus for the show, was getting that thing together and running, and with the help of many others, including Lee, wherever he went in the rooms over there behind the lights. And Lee can come up and talk more about it if he wants at some point. But that was a big success. We were in the back of the central hall, for those of you who found us. We found the traffic was on the light side, but everybody who came to find us for a purpose, as opposed to the tire kickers who come up to your booth and say, so, what do you guys do?
Bunch of yellow shirted students.
And, oh, well, just a minute here, students. The hell with your students. This was my favorite equipment mounting in the demos at the IP showcase. I just had to show you this. The desire for a shelf in the wall did not work out. However, multiple Cat 5s and a couple of fibers to the rescue, and this Tektronix frame did not sag badly. And most importantly, Rick brought with him a whole bunch of Ryerson students. They came and plowed the floor of NAB. And they advertised our technical conference, and a whole number of them came and operated our studio for us every afternoon and provided coverage of the IABM theater presentation. So really nice to have them come both front and back. And I have one of those shirts, and it's in a dark bag in a dark place because it's cold. And finally, just a humorous little video. Do you want to roll this? This is really cool. This was out front again this year. This is one of these Cinnabots. And it dances with you. And not its most compelling work, actually. If you want to see some really cool Cinnabot footage, you have to have a look on YouTube. There's some really cool stuff there. But there were 2 or 3 systems like that to show as well. So anyway, just in summary, I was a little disappointed that there was no real cool new thing in technology. HDRs all over the place, looking for a home, like a uniform place to land. IP is everywhere, of course. New lenses for 4K and HDR. Obviously, lenses are hard. The lenses keep evolving, and new cameras and so on. But I didn't really see anything that blew my mind, and maybe I just missed it. And you guys will prove me wrong. Who's that?
In the right order. Well. So for me, it's been rare that I go to I find everything sort of more incremental in nature when you go to a trade show. You follow the trends, and you see some of the technology that are coming out, and you can almost predict stuff that comes out of that technology. So for my presentation, there were a couple of interesting technologies. Now this actually showed up last year as a preview, and it actually won a Game Changer Award. It's a wireless audio system, but they're using 6.5 gigahertz, and more interestingly, they're using something called ultra wideband. So basically, it's a 2.5 nanosecond pulse. So one of the interesting aspects of that is 99% of the time it's actually turned off. There's nothing going on, but that pulse carries the equivalent of 24 audio channels, uncompressed. So I thought that quite interesting. That's the back of the unit. It won this year. It won a show award as well.
And we used that, by the way, in the IP showcase. That was our theater wireless mic.
Oh,
beautiful.
Cool. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And the antenna system is based more like a Wi-Fi thing. It doesn't have a huge. I think it's like 95 feet line of sight, but you can deploy it more like an IP-based access point. So Lawo Smart is basically broadcast network monitoring. They have something called a dashboard and a scope. And the interesting thing about this is that it lets you drill down in a complex broadcast environment and give you telemetry of all the packets that are in your network. It'll tell you if a packet is staying too long in a buffer of a switch, gives you the jitter of the system, and more importantly, gives you tools to drill down to where the problem is when you've got something going on. So, you know, as opposed to looking at what's on an Arista switch through their tools, this was more centric for a broadcast technician as opposed to an IT person. I always like going to the front offer because once again, you're looking at core technologies that's coming down the pipe, that's still in development. This is HEVC future. I guess it would be H.266 when it gets released. The presentation here, you'll see a dark vertical line. It's basically sweeping left to right, and you see the image compressed at 6 megabits from 265, and I guess what would be 266 when they finally release it. The idea is to get a bit rate reduction of about 50%, and at the point of this development, they're about at 40%. So, of course, we're all looking for higher and higher compression with better quality, especially as we move from 4 to 8K. They also, Front Opera also showed their MPEG-H audio, 3D audio systems, and here they're showing Pro Tools and Pyramix. So this is all part of the immersive audio system stuff that's going on in the market. Once again, more on a technology base because this is driving a lot of stuff that's being used by different manufacturers and memory systems. So NVMe and SSD. This is showing the massive 30 terabyte. I think the 15 terabyte is about $10,000, but Samsung is starting to go into mass production of these this year. And of course, high-speed memories with, you know, extremely, just take a look at those throughputs. And, you know, this is driven by, of course, computing, and broadcast can use this for, you know, doing serious rendering for high-resolution material. There was a company that was actually creating essentially server farms for NVMe. So, frankly, I was scared to ask what one of these things fully loaded with NVMe memory is, but I have to assume they're quite expensive. So that was quite, you know, I'm guessing most of this is for enterprise, but they're at a broadcast show, so they're being used for, you know, media playback. This is off, I tried to grab a bunch of stuff that's off the beaten path. This is a CubeTech, small German company, and they're into the archiving market. So this is something called Film Calibration Inspector. And basically they create a piece of 35 millimeter film with special stuff on it. They run through a scanner, they collect that data. The operator basically says a red light, green light, yellow light to understand the optical and mechanical properties of the scanner before they start archiving, before they start ingesting. You can dig down and get a full report. That was a photo I took, and this is from, later I grabbed a screenshot from one of the reports online. Gives you quite a bit of data. In each one of these items, you get more data, including where this stuff happens across the duration of your film while you're ingesting. So I guess on the AI thing, IBM Watson was there, and once again scraping video, and not only scraping video, but editing it and making it available for operators based on search criteria. In this case, it was for the masters, so they would look at what the interesting shots based on what the expression of the crowd was in the gallery. So they would actually scan all the people that are watching, and if by their expression they thought it was interesting, they would tag it. So that's that. Frame.io, this is another company that won a Best of Show award. So this is basically cloud collaborative technology. It was interesting for me because, like many of you might have seen the Aspera presentation about a year ago, where the CTO of Aspera talked about their high-speed FTP transfer. And they're about 5 times faster than Aspera in terms of transfer of materials. So this is for collaborative production environments. It's an HTML5 system that also has plugins for different NLEs like Premiere and Avid. Along the same front end, others might mention video LED wall systems. Laird had an interesting situation where they had basically a backdrop, a back wall and a floor that was all done with LEDs, basically creating VR environments for broadcast. And they had a camera in front of this display here, right where I was taking the picture. There was a Sony camera, and they were displaying it here on the monitor. And it was just sort of another approach than doing a green screen. That was kind of interesting, kind of compelling. And once again, because of you were seeing 1.2 and 1.5 millimeter pixel pitch for the LED systems. So the resolution and the brightness and a lot of this stuff is all sort of Rec 2020 based, so the color is just stunning, really. There's my presentation.
So far, I think this is going to work out really well. I'm a pacer, so I have to stand up when I talk. People ask me how many times I've been to NAB. My answer is I don't know. I would have gone for the first time 48 years ago when I was 12 years old with my father, of course, who was a Ryerson grad and started the company. So I'm going to talk mostly about sort of the general business, the high-level things I saw happening in the industry and at the show. To me, this NAB was predictably under-delivering. In fact, I know a few key customers who actually decided not to go as the show approached, knowing that there might not be as many things as we thought. So in many respects, a lot of people are already shifting themselves towards IBC mode. And I think this was, I agree, it was quite predictable in that it really didn't deliver anything stunning that we had thought. Attendance figures were not yet released. It did seem busier than in past years, although it's, if we start to think about maybe being 10% down. The thing that bugs me about the LBCC is that NAB insists on trying to keep it spread out to fill the whole show. So more and more people moved into the South Hall, more and more significant exhibitors moved into the South Hall, so it became an absolute crush, and it was very, very hard to move around. Some reorganization with even more of the key suppliers locating in the South Hall. So again, I think if we all lobby Eberts to move out of the North Hall, we won't ever have to walk to that infernal place. It regained its nickname called the Leper Colony again, being in the North Hall. The layout is another thing I noticed with NAB, and I've taken pictures of it in the past, and I've taken pictures of empty spaces. They gerrymander the layout so that it looks like they're still filling the whole show, when indeed they're not. Lots of discussion about industry consolidation. There was one big industry acquisition when Belden, of course, acquired SAM. It is clear, especially in the infrastructure side of the business, there is a great deal of stress, and everybody's trying to figure out how to rationalize a business plan for the next generation. So this was the Snell booth. It was hastily converted to a bunch of tables and chairs, a couple of spots away from the grass. So to me, this was kind of a statement unto itself, in that one of the older names, Snell and Quantel, of course, would merge together to form SAM, was gone and part of the Belden group. So in the back rooms and whatnot, there was a lot of discussion about what other suppliers are going to consolidate and which moves are going to happen next. And it is clear there is going to be continuing change in the broadcast industry. NAB rebranding, so the MET effect. I didn't notice it so much last year. In fact, it was interesting that you reminded that they started that branding last year, because I kind of just noticed it for the first time, as they are clearly trying to do what even we're trying to do in our own company, is that it is media technology versus broadcast, audiovisual, or anything else. We are definitely in a world of media technology. A lot of the exhibitors in the last couple of years started to talk about the backpacker. And clearly, NAB is comprised a lot more of people who have nothing to do with the broadcast business, but are generally involved in some form of media or interested in media. So as I pointed out, when you went into the North Hall, where there was mostly just pure broadcast stuff, you could spot the broadcasters because they're all over 50 wearing sport coats, and all the other people are walking around with backpacks. So I think it was a great idea to rebrand as a media technology show. In my 10 years on the SMPTE board, one of the things I was repeatedly talked about is how to branch out of straight broadcast and motion picture and into more media technology. So I thought that branding I actually thought it was pretty good branding, and I thought it was a good move for NAB. And certainly in the years that we saw the show declining with employment in the broadcast industry, I think it's caused NAB to rebound as appealing to this broader base of constituents. So I needed a victim, so just on the last day of the show, I took a picture of this unsuspecting individual as one of the typical younger, funky shoes backpacker. And of course, this was also this media entertainment technology effect, and I took a little bit of a different spin on the ATSC 3.0. I think there was just generally a lot of ambivalence to it, and a lot of people outright groaning, do we really need over-the-air transmission going forward? So these are some of the technology highlights, I think, general. IP. It actually felt like a lot of vendors actually went backwards and talked less about IP this year than they did in IBC or NAB last year. In many, I could be a bit cynical and say that with many vendors, they were actually coming forward and saying SDI is alive and well, we will do hybrid SDI and IP, and some of it felt a little bit like, maybe if we just don't talk about IP, it'll go away, and they'll all buy our standard SDI stuff. Maybe later on I'd be interested in getting Mr. Briscoe and others. You hear various limitations and descriptions of what an IP hybrid SDI might work. And a couple of vendors are coming out with proprietary boxes instead of switches. So two rather large vendors were saying that they were going to provide IP, bespoke IP broadcast equipment. A lot of us think that the future is in COTS switches, but nevertheless, there's a difference of opinion in terms of how IP, either proprietary or COTS. It was one of the things I noticed is all the production switchers still have SDI cores. So one of the big limitations in the part of the market that wants to build out IP sooner than later is if the thing at the center of our production is still going to be SDI, and we don't want an SDI IP core. It's kind of one of the big limiting factors in terms of doing an IP migration now. I'm surprised that nobody had pictures of the IP showcase. It was really hard to find. It was well hidden at the back of the central hall. In fact, a lot of us walked around for quite a while before finding it. I expected a lot more people to have pictures, so I didn't take too many of them. I didn't really find there was much of a change since IBC. I didn't think really there was anything that had advanced a great deal since IBC. So obviously this is just some of the general pictures. I notice AES 67 seemed to be overpowering Dante in the broadcast business, whereas in the AV business it is still mostly Dante, and you heard a lot of very equal treatment between the AES 67 and Dante camps. Now I was trying to figure out, Paul, I didn't notice that much had changed in the JTNM progress Gantt chart.
Well, all the changes is the vertical red line as to where we are. 2110 is published now, so this whole thing's published, and we're working on compressed video transport. ISO 4, we were demoing, that's released and published. This ISO 5 is released and published, that's also being demoed. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going to happen this summer, evidently.
One of the things that was talked about was that the 2110 standard is somewhat open for interpretation, so that it seems the development of the ISO 5 and 6 are going to be required to get the endpoints controlled. But just in some of the tests that we've been doing in the field just point to the fact that it does seem to be open to interpretation in a lot of various aspects. I thought this was, one of the things that I thought we were going to get rid of with 2110 is a dash for every different resolution. The industry and many of the seminars I went to, or many of the product introductions by vendors, actually talked about 2110 not being 4K or UHD. And I found myself wanting to jump out of the chair. So it seems that even though UHD can be mapped into 2110 now, and of course anything up to 35,000 pixels, the industry seems to need some sort of tag to say this is how to do it, and it's going to be called dash something or another. But surprised how many people commenting that 2110 wasn't yet UHD compatible.
Yet there it is.
Yet there it is. So, and again, anonymity to protect the innocent, but I'm talking about some pretty big name companies were saying that in their Sunday sessions. Cloud and virtualization. You know, I'm a bit more of a skeptic on cloud. It was interesting. I went to an Avid event for their advisory council, and they started having a discussion about cloud, and I didn't know which side I had come in on. They were saying things like, well, how do you know a cloud, the price of a cloud service won't start to escalate once you're in it, like your cable or internet bill, and whatever happened to good old depreciation. So when you got to talk about OpEx versus CapEx and things like that, well, one nice thing that financial people like is depreciation when something's depreciated. So I think still, personally I'm a bit skeptical about where we're going to use a hosted cloud. I think everything in terms of a workflow is going to be virtualized. And so we just kind of leave it up to everybody else to decide whether they want to do it in their own facility or a computer somewhere else, as they call cloud. I was surprised two companies, Avid and Viz, were really hyping the fact that they had come out with a new line of free product. And for me in a commercial trade show, being a commercial animal, it was a little bit hard to cope with these exciting announcements about stuff that's free. Considering cloud goes, the traffic goes both directions, we seem to have coined the term egress now as the bandwidth connectivity to a virtual cloud, hosted cloud, and so security and egress are still the biggest issues in terms of so-called cloud deployments. Obviously, we're seeing people like AWS and IBM showing up at these shows to a great degree. Yes, IBM, one of the leaders in the artificial intelligence. We basically see two broad categories of use for AI. One is to search your archive, to categorize things, repurpose content, and the other, which is very impressive, looking at things like watching the behavior of the people around a soccer ball, is in live production assist. And it's amazing how accurate some of the AI is in live production assist. But again, obviously IBM touting their Watson in just about everything around the show. And it's interesting because I remember going to SIGGRAPH when Silicon Graphics and a lot of the companies were in and out of the business and out of the trade shows. I thought this was one of the most impressive. I stood there watching this like a puppy dog in the window. It was amazing how well the protected path in the 2022-7 worked because I kept swearing that both pictures were broken up simultaneously, let a proper cohesive picture was getting through. So I thought of all the things I noticed that seemed to have appeared, I thought this was a really, really good demo and showing both pictures. I kept taking pictures until I could actually get one frame where both Path B and Path B, which would have been Path A, where both were broken up simultaneously. I won't get too far into it, but one of the aspects of describing an SDI IP hybrid is the fact that we're still stuck in black burst. PTP can go much faster than that, and again, maybe we'll get some comments later on about the merits of restricting PTP to something intended for an old CRT. Other notable technologies, the introduction of off-the-shelf 8K product, which can actually be purchased. Yay, we still have fractional frame rates, 119.88 frames per second. Both Sony and Ikegami came with cameras that were just under $500,000, and they said they were actually now finished products, and they said if you think that's expensive, that was still about the same as we charged for the first HD cameras we ever shipped. I'm surprised as well on the verge of the IP revolution that we're still seeing a lot of new 12 gig SDI product that seem to be growing and more options and workflows. The IT increased its visibility, obviously AWS, IBM, Dell buying Isilon and things like that. ATS-3 rollout, again, I thought it was a bit of a groaner for a lot of people, and certainly the Canadians, I didn't see anybody terribly interested or rushing over to learn more about ATSC3. More and better LEDs. So I have a background in the display business, going way back, and it's interesting, one of the things that LEDs may change is the old 24p format used in cinema. So when you have a 49 nit film or a DLP projector, it's one thing. When you a dull LED board is 1,000 nits, and suddenly higher frame rates look much better because LEDs aren't constantly illuminated. They have various scanning systems, and if you download Pete Putnam, the display guru at SMPTE, download his annual paper, you can read about some of the different ways that LEDs actually scan and some of the systems. So this is just a bunch of random pictures from around the show. Again, 8K was starting to show up more and more. Yes, it shows that in the future when we have autonomous cars, that will all look like they come from a Woody Allen movie. At CES, all the future driving and futuristic cars all also look like some sort of bubble. And again, the LEDs, we're seeing them more and more often as backdrops to TV sets. LEDs are dropping at about 50% price drop per year. So literally, it's like the early days of flat panels when you get a different price list every month for them. One of the things that, just a little side note I find about LEDs is when they show the pitch of them, people aren't necessarily describing the aperture ratio. So sometimes the proportion of illuminated to unilluminated surface area of an LED of the same pitch can be quite different. So when we're starting to do tests on them for on-air displays and reducing moire, it's often the amount of dark space versus how small the illuminated space is. It's funny, we all took that the same booth and the same picture of the same squares. The most underrated technology, considering that we started the specifications threads in SMPTE with the NABA DPP coming into IMF. It was a great thing done on the board last June. Finally rolled out the first specification in November. One of the greatest forces in the universe, Apple, has recently filed, or said they will file a registered disclosure document for ProRes, which is one of the bit formats that everybody wanted to see. So I think IMF is one of the most significant things. If IP is the technology underpinning of the plant, then IMF is the multimedia, multi-format publishing, artistic train. And I was quite surprised, given that the DPP, of course, which is recognized by the EBU, NABA, the North American Broadcast Association, the Netflix, the Disneys, the Library of Congress are all behind IMF, and yet you could find IMF offerings, but I would have expected it to be a much more prevalent piece of new technology at the show. I just threw this in at the end, and if you remember the outdoor mobile parking and truck area, it really was a pale shadow of what it was several years ago. So we're seeing in our business news trucks, obviously, with citizen journalism and handheld devices, are really sort of eroding the whole remote truck. But this section of the exhibit was much smaller than I'd ever seen it. And where I thought I'd end, right down from the IP. So at one end, or the IP showcase where we had the cutting edge of technology, this was the lowest tech booth I found at NAB. So I thought I'd end it there. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, there's both good and bad in going last. One of the things I have to say is you guys all have a great experience here tonight, because the experience from all of us, I think, is going to be quite different. our viewpoint of the show is going to be quite different. So you really gained quite a bit of knowledge, because I know I spent literally every minute that the show was open scouring the show, and there's many things that were in some of those presentations that I didn't see. So that's just to give you some insight about how large the show really is and how much ground there is to cover. And literally, I was walking 8 to 10 kilometers a day. So just to give you an idea of how much there is to see in the show. I just got back late last night, so I didn't really have a lot of time to put a lot of things together today. I was actually quite busy too today, so I just kind of threw a few little things together that I want to talk about, mostly gadgets that we're deploying or showing some of the latest emerging technologies, and just some things that I noticed about the show. One of the things I would say first off is I thought the show was definitely a lot lighter than I had seen in other years, and the traffic at the show. And one of the other things that I felt this year that was very strange to me, it was kind of mentioned, it was kind of like the NAB picked up a snow globe and shook it and kind of watched all the flakes or all the boosts kind of scatter all over, because there didn't seem to be any key areas to the show. Everything was everywhere. Like in previous years, like last year and the year before, there was a VR area, and now I found VR booths like all over the show, and there was lighting booths all over the show, and there was audio booths all over the show. So it wasn't like you could walk through one hall or one area and really experience and compare. You literally, if you were trying to look at something and you're going, what did that do again? You really almost had to run to the other end of the show to go, check it out again if you wanted to check back on it or whatever. So you had to really do a lot of travels, because I thought that was kind of missing, that there didn't seem to really be any cohesion or real story or theme to the show. They did do the rebranding of the net effect of the show. I kind of like that. I think it's a reflection of what the changing times in the broadcasting industry, and that they do have to attract more and more of these backpackers to the show to try and keep the show viable and keep the doors open. The three biggest themes of this year's show, to me, really, I think, was IP infrastructure, overall kind of workflow improvements, and RGB lighting. I think the whole lighting, like you could practically say it was the NAB lighting show, because there just seemed to be so many lighting booths this year. Just everybody and their cousin had an LED light. It was crazy. There was no big rage or anything that everyone was talking about. There was no big talk of the show or anything that everyone was excited. But I found there really was more to see. It was just everything was more incremental in its improvement. And there was also a lot of things going on behind closed doors. So I kind of almost got the sense that there's a lot more to come this year, like over upcoming months and into the fall. That was the sense I got, is a lot of people just weren't ready to show their big things yet. And so there was a lot of stuff happening behind closed doors. It's just this one? Yeah, okay. So cameras, that's always talk of the NAB. So I just took a quick snapshot of different cameras that were introduced at the show. The first on the top left there was that Blackmagic Pocket 4K camera. It's a micro four thirds inch sensor. It's a true micro four thirds. Anybody that knew the Pocket camera before, it was actually more of a Super 16 size sensor. Takes a Canon battery in a Blackmagic product, and interchangeable micro four thirds lenses, and it uses a hybrid carbon fiber body. And that's one of the things that was most noticeable about this camera, is how lightweight it was when you picked it up. But that was just the prototype. That wasn't even the actual carbon body that they're going to ship with, and had a full 5-inch display on the back of it. So a very good, high-quality 5-inch display on the back of it. And I think this camera at US dollars, $12.95, and that includes.
Please no prices.
Okay, sorry. Okay, and around that area, but it also includes a copy of a full copy of DaVinci Resolve, and now DaVinci Resolve includes a free copy of Fusion, which is kind of like their After Effects type of program where you can create effects, and also includes a full copy of their audio program, which is also in there. So now the audio is also enhanced. So that was a great, I thought that was a great and probably the hottest little camera. One of the greatest things about it is it can record RAW on board for that low price. So as a full cinema camera, being able to record ProRes and RAW, I thought that was great. Sony did a touch-up to their FS5. There's a new FS5 II. It has tweaked color science, which mimics what's being done on their high-end Venice that they just introduced. So greatly improved skin tones and overall colorimetry on the camera, and can do a 4-second burst of 120 frame 4K on the camera. And also now will come with a full RAW license so that you can record RAW externally. They also revamped 2 of their cameras. Previously hadn't really seen a 4K RGB with a prism 1/3" camcorder with a 20x lens. So they introduced a new camera that will come in September called the PXW Z190. That's the second one there from the right. And then they also introduced an upgrade of the PXW 200, which was a very, very common broadcast kind of portable camera. Previously the PXW 200, which is now the PXW Z280. And that has a 1/2" chipset in it, 4K with an RGB prism in it. So quite a great camera. Both of these cameras also have streaming features built into the camera so that you can stream directly from the camera. And will record in either 4K or in HD modes. There's a picture of me behind the Blackmagic studio camera there that was introduced, Blackmagic Ursa Mini broadcast studio camera with the Canon big studio lens there and a big Vinton tripod. It's amazing that that camera is priced under $5,000 for that broadcast camera, and basically you can kit it up into a full broadcast camera package like that. You can even, it's shown there with a fiber back system on it and a full studio viewfinder. So again, without glass and without the tripod, it's still under $10,000, which I'm just amazed that that system can be at that price. I really think that's a huge game changer. It really tells you why the whole broadcast industry is really changing. The camera in the middle is a new version of Canon's C700. The C700 was upgraded to a full frame camera, and so it has a new full frame chipset in it, and it can record in 4K using the 3.2 full frame sensor directly to onboard cards, which no other camera can actually do right now. So I thought that was quite amazing, and it comes in both an EF and a PL version. So I thought that was quite a great camera. This camera from a non-camera company, really, it was a data video camera, a new camera they introduced called the Nighthawk. And they had this nice display where they basically had a little cityscape and whatnot that was inside of a box, and they were shooting this camera inside of a box with virtually zero illumination and showing quite good pictures coming from it. A 4K camera with a remote lens on it and whatnot that can be hooked up for a PTZ type camera or into that type of system. The other camera down the bottom was JVC introduced a new HD camera at the show. And you're going, what are they doing with introducing a new broadcast type shoulder mount or studio camera HD? And really what they were promoting was this connected cam or stream cam technology that they can basically directly stream right out of the camera. You don't need to add any other third-party boxes or anything into the camera itself. So there were quite a few cameras, despite most people saying that there were no cameras at NAB this year. There were actually quite a few. I'm clicking, but I'm not moving. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, go back. Go to the IP infrastructure one then. You're clicking, I'm clicking, and I think that's not working. Okay, this one. So again, IP infrastructure was everywhere on the show floor. I just grabbed these couple pictures from the Sony booth. Basically, they're talking about the combination of 4K and HDR and IP infrastructure. They actually showed one of their high-end broadcast switchers that was completely IP. So basically, there is no SDI port on the back end of it at all anymore. It's all just IP plugs on the back of the mainframe of the switcher. They also have their C Media Cloud platform, and they're talking about how you can acquire, produce, collaborate, and archive all seamlessly over IP. And they have their XCam Air thing that allows you to also connect over IP wirelessly through the cloud. So there are lots of that kind of talk at the show from all kinds of manufacturers. I just happened to grab these couple examples in the booth I was in. Okay, next. Can go to the next slide. Yeah, so workflow, I thought the biggest announcement really just happened days before the show, but was being shown in several places at the show, was ProRes RAW. So I thought that was a kind of huge that Apple had now adopted and introduced a RAW format, and that companies like Atomos immediately were announcing that they had products that would record RAW in this new ProRes RAW format. So basically, I thought this was a dramatic improvement from Apple. And then also from Blackmagic, they introduced the new DaVinci Resolve 15 and added many new features to the 15, but I think one of the most significant things was that Resolve was now found inside of the package, as well as all of that audio functionality inside an editor / color corrector piece of software. So it's basically a full suite platform that you can now download for free that'll do up to UHD, and if you do need full cinema, then you can buy a license, and the license is quite affordable, or you get the license for free with that little pocket 4K camera. So I thought that was pretty crazy. They also showed an upgrade to their ATEM platform of switchers. So in the middle, they actually have, based on their ATEM Studio Pro, they now have a Pro 4K. So, and this switcher has scalers in it, finally. So from a Blackmagic point of view, I thought that was quite good, that you could actually have any format coming in and it could scale it all internally. And they also showed this little box on the right here, which will ship this summer, which is their first camera control system with hardware controllers. So it emulates the typical CCU type controller that you would have for any broadcast camera. There are four camera controls, but you can control unlimited cameras through that box. You can just basically switch to any camera that you want. And again, very affordable. And then on the computer on the left, they're running the audio software on the computer on the left, and the audio software has their Fairlight module now in it. So it has also all their graphic EQs and everything. So I thought that this was a pretty practical. Okay, and then next slide. That's all 12G capable. I also thought Teradek and Small HD had partnered together quite well at the show. Teradek introduced a new 10,000-foot receiver system for uncompressed HD transmission, and they introduced a whole new full line of Bolt transmitters. So all of their 500 and 1,000 and 8,000, they've all been upgraded. They still have this they also have a 20,000 module as well. So new modules, and then that same technology has been directly incorporated into a 7-inch Small HD monitor. So it has basically has the receiver built right into the back of the monitor with little handles on the side on a 7-inch LCD. They showed that at the show, and also Small HD introduced 2 new small models that were 5-inch screen models based on their Focus. I don't know if anybody ever seen that, which was really more aimed at the DSLR type market as being a little LCD that you could put on the top. But they actually introduced 5 models now, 2 of them OLED and 2 of them that are, well, one's a transmitter and a receiver. So the transmitter you can pass through and it can simultaneously transmit it off to the receiver that has the built-in 5-inch monitor. So I thought that was pretty good. Also up in the right-hand corner, they introduced the world's first HEVC transmitter based on their VDU series. So it does HEVC encoding rather than H.2.64, and also has little plug-in modules for a bonded solution. So you can buy the center part of the box if you just want to stream over IP, and then if you want a full bonded solution, you can just buy the little modules that'll go in the side. So this is a full HEVC bonded solution camera top transmission system. So I thought that was pretty cool. Next slide. Okay, so RGB lights were everywhere. So I think the premier RGB light out there introduced a few years ago was the Sky Panel from Airy. It's kind of the most well-known of the family of lights. And this year at NAB, they upgraded the Sky Panel to version 4 software that added more effects and more control and a color picker from an app and things like that. Below that is some LEDGO Magic Hue, which are very affordable panels. PinoFlow showed a new Diva series of panels. They've already done their other panels as well that have color modules. The light panels, Gemini, they were showing things like twin and quad yokes so that you could either twin them or quad them together to create larger light sources with the Gemini panels. I thought those were very cool. Kino was also showing some tubes that you could use to either retrofit some of your tube PinoFlow type 4 banks and things like that, or that you could actually use them just for tube lighting on set and whatnot with any of their freestyle controllers. There was a company called Hive Lighting that had nice little things that were like little tiny car cans that were actually full RGB. Roscoe recently took over a company called DMG Lumiere, and they introduced a full new line of Lumiere lighting that is fully RGB, that also has all of the Roscoe colors, which they claim are the only ones on the market that are truly Roscoe colors, things like that. And of course, there was a myriad of very affordable panels starting from a couple $100 range that could now actually also do RGB, so that you could create colored lighting and more effective lighting in any of your productions. So just, I mean, so many people were showing RGB lighting. One company actually showed something that I thought was so cool though. They actually showed a little module that you could take and use this module like a pointer. And it was basically your color picker. And so you could point it at anything you wanted to point at. And say you wanted to point it at the green grass, now your light would produce the exact same color as that green grass. But not only could it do that, but you could actually record changes in light. So in other words, you could hold the color picker up and record a sunset. And now the light would then replay and mimic the lighting of the sunset. So I thought that was like astoundingly cool from a lighting perspective. It was just like there's still a lot of things to come, I think, in the lighting world. So you know, there was obviously a lot of grip equipment too, as we saw. So a lot of lighting support and things like that. Next slide. So these were just some other very cool things. This is kind of the end of a picture. It's a new thing from Red Rock Micro that they call the DigiBoot. And it was just something they wore kind of around their neck, had the audio inputs down at this end, and they had a Blackmagic Micro camera mounted at this end. But this is primarily designed for doing broadcast sports. And basically, they have full control of that camera, being able to control all the menus, all the selections, everything to do with the camera, the exposure, everything of the camera. So I think that actually combined with the other Blackmagic camera that we talked about at the beginning is going to make a very powerful product. And in fact, they've supposedly already taken orders for hundreds and hundreds from major sports broadcasters at the show. This was another product, which was a new Ninja V entry level. Took one of the Video Maker Best of Show Awards, which is an entry level recorder and uses a smaller type media. Very small, compact, that could go on a digital SLR and record ProRes or Avid type codecs. Next slide. Gimbals, again, were everywhere at the show. Everyone was showing new gimbals. Some of the new cool things on some of the gimbals. the latest Zion Tech Plus. You can mount your phone on top of the gimbal, and you can use your phone's camera, which communicates with the gimbal, and this will have a motion tracker so that you can outline the subject that you want to be tracking, and now this camera will track that person. So if you had even a speaker, live speaker like us on the stage, you could set this up on a tripod and literally have the gimbal would be an auto tracking symbol that would just pan back and forth as the person was walking around on the stage. So I thought that was very cool. These guys, Moza as well, have a system. They have a little Mimic controller, whatever, in a sub $1,000 gimbal. I thought that was very cool. They also, they were showing some prototype of that motion track system. DJI had new gimbals as well, but they're still supposedly at least 6 to 8 weeks out for their announcements. They were showing a bunch of things at the show. Very cool little controller with full camera focus controller, wheel mounted on the side. That was really cool. Tilta had a new series of gimbals as well, and the Tilta, I thought this was kind of crazy because I've never seen such a big camera. This is actually a C200 mounted on a single handheld gimbal. And so what they actually do is they put the gimbal backwards. So in the app, you actually flip it backwards so that it can hold that heavy payload and put the lens out on that side. So, but a lot of interfaces for monitors and whatnot, so you can really build this thing out to make it really like a professional. And then another thing that Tilta showed is a new micro motor for the follow focus system, for this gimbal system that'll be coming. And I thought that was cool because that motor is just so small. So if any of you are quite familiar with all the other kind of focus motors that are out there, they're very, very large and heavy. So this allows you to then, again, move the focus wheel on the side of the camera and have full follow focus, manual follow focus control driving that lens. So I thought that was pretty cool. Next slide. Go back one. These guys, Syrup, introduced a new motion tracking system. It's a couple of modules that can do frame recording, so you can set up a whole trajectory and do everything that you want. So you can do 5-axis type control. I thought that was very cool. Lytra, some of you might know, these guys, they make a very, very compact little light. They showed one that's just a little bit larger, twice the size, fully bicolor, and again, fully submersible, so totally waterproof type light. So I thought that was kind of cool for the size and output of the light. Next slide. This thing in the data video booth I thought was quite impressive. It takes up to 8 SDI inputs and can record and stream simultaneously all of those streams. So I thought that was very cool that you can just connect storage to it and either record and stream simultaneously multiple streams. And there is also other type gimbals out in the market as well from all kinds of vendors that were obviously for the iPhone, which is obviously becoming more and more and more popular. People wanting to record, even broadcasters wanting to record on their iPhones. So these were very prevalent, and you can see that this also has a focus controller on the side of it so that you can actually pull focus with your iPhone, and you can use the little thumb dial and thumb wheel to control zoom and other type of actions on your phone. So the features are getting very, very, very complex and very high-end for such low-end equipment. Next. These were some other really cool things. This is HP. That's one of the things I saw as well. HP won one of the NAB Show Awards. They introduced a new color-accurate grading monitor. Very, very affordable. Quite good. And that was one of my comments when they talked about LEDs and LED panels. I was in some back rooms where I was seeing LED panels that were being shown side by side with OLEDs, and you could not tell the difference at all. I mean, it was incredible, the kind of black levels and stuff that they're starting to achieve off some of the LED panels. I was quite surprised the performance that you were getting. The only way that you could actually tell the panels apart was by viewing angle. So if you went off axis, then you could tell it was the LED. Other than that, if you're in front of it, it was amazing. For color correction, some of these new monitors were really good. And this little thing was announced earlier, but shown at NAB, which it was not just a rugged display, but they actually have a thing called Co-Pilot. That's why I put it there, but we showed also robots before. They had a little robot here that was at the front of their booth, and this thing was just doing flybys of this little set all the time with their rugged drive on it. But their Co-Pilot product is a hard drive, portable hard drive that basically requires no laptop to be able to back up your files. So it has an SD micro card slot built into it and also a USB input. And so now anywhere you are in the field, whether you're recording with a UAV or drone, or if you're just want to be able to back up your photos from your camera or your videos from your video camera, you can just hook up a card reader to it, instantly back up to it, and then you can also clone the entire backup to another mobile drive to take in the field. So these type of very affordable DIT solutions to be able to back up in the field, I thought were quite impressive. Next slide. This was just another light. The Rhodolite Innova Pro 2 was introduced, and it won another Best of Show award. Next. And this is what I did for the weekend after. So this was actually the very best part of NAB, and so I have to tell you, if you ever have the chance to go, take the time to go see Hoover Dam, obviously the Grand Canyon, and we also went and drove all the way down to Sedona afterwards. So that's why I'm not quite as prepared as I'd like to be, but anyway, I'm a little bit more relaxed than I was the week before I left. So anyway, that's it.